Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CoronaSphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, coming to you from the endless void of despair here in lockdown, California, with episode 3 of the CoronaSphere Lounge. This one's going to be a lot more organized than the last one, which was a lot more organized than the one before. Kind of learning how to do these shows. So we'll get right into it. Don't want to waste any time. Basically, this is where I would like people to come to get good news that can be verified. We're not going to skip over bad news, and we're not going to talk about any stories that don't seem to have some kind of decent credibility or scientific basis or so on. But today is a real good news day because today I got the feeling is like the first day that the humans counterattack. This virus is effing with the wrong effing species. That's what I have to say. So let's get started. Why don't we? We got all kinds of interesting news, all of it good. And the still haven't had enough data to see if the social quarantine is going to be working, but a lot of things have been going on, so let's get rolling. By the way, as part of this show, I just have to say two things. First of all, I thought President Trump was just magnificent today, and secondly, I'm not saying that for political reasons. There, I don't know if you felt it. I've felt it. There's a tremendous change in the country, and President Trump got up there and said he's really impressed with Governors Cuomo and Newsom, formerly bitter enemies, and he gave them a lot of credit. He gave Bill de Blasio credit. So when I say the president was magnificent today, I'm not saying the Republican president. I just thought that the president of the United States was just very, very, very good. And he seems to be getting more confident every day. And today, watching him today, I got the sense that I don't know if this is the first day I really got that sense, but certainly in his press conference today, this is recording this on Sunday, he struck me as a guy who now is an executive who has a problem. He's an executive who's got a supply problem. And that is, we just couldn't be in better shape than that. And to see him praising Newsom and Governor Cuomo, to hear Governor Cuomo and Newsom and Ilhan Omar of all people saying that the president's handling this well, it's just, you know, it's just tremendous. I really, really, I really feel good about that, and that's kind of a theme of the show today. Lots and lots and lots of good news, some good medical news, but other stuff as well. It's just great to be an American again and not have to be a conservative or a Republican or a Democrat. I'm feeling it everywhere. This is what happens when you have a species that's built to worry and built to fight. If there's nothing major to worry and fight about, then we'll worry and fight about smaller things. And just like a family that does really well if there's a hurricane coming or you have to put sandbags out or something, you put that same family in a car for a 20-hour road trip with nothing to do, you're going to find some internal squabbles, but I'm going with the good news on this. Things feel great. Attitude out there is great. Let's take a quick look at a couple of examples of great. Got some medical news coming up. We'll talk about that in a second. But talking about just the overall mood of the country and why I'm feeling just like the counterattack begins today, why don't we start here? Harbor Freight Company. It's basically a hardware store and deals with a lot of interesting stuff like that. Just a real nuts and bolts company. Certainly not very glamorous. Certainly not very well known unless you happen to be in the business. But Harbor Freight issued a statement today, and it says, "Dear Harbor Freight community, here's the main part of it. As we've been following the news over the last few days, we've heard about the severe shortage of protective gear for hospitals, healthcare workers, and first responders as the impact of COVID-19 is being felt across the country. America depends on these heroes every day, and in the days ahead, we will depend on them even more. At Harbor Freight, we want them to know that they can depend on us too. So, we've decided to donate our entire supply of personal protective equipment items listed below to frontline hospitals with 24-hour emergency rooms in the communities served by our stores." This is the kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that I just think is absolutely essential. Forgive the spectacles here and the reflection. I saw this, I think the first case I saw this was just a couple days into it when I mentioned that Uber Eats, which is practically an essential service now, said certainly there was a time when you could simply say, well, since you have to use Uber Eats, we're raising our delivery fee. You could justify raising the delivery fee in terms of them being more busy and everything. But But Uber came out and said, no, we're not only not going to raise the delivery fee, we're going to eliminate it. No delivery fees during the duration of this crisis. That's amazing. I've heard banks about a day or two after that, major banks saying, in so many words, look, we know it's going to be tough, and we know what's going on, and we know you've got a job to go to. You're just not allowed to go to it. So major banks are saying things like, if we have to reduce mortgage payments, we will. If we have to basically suspend them until everybody's back on their feet, that's what we'll do. It won't hurt your credit. You know, I'm beginning to think that the response to this is a much softer America than it used to be, and God knows I've been one of the people crying the loudest about it. But there is an upside to this, and we're seeing it now. The days of people being able to gouge you because they had you over a barrel, I'm not seeing any sign of it at all. I'm just not. And all across the country, I'm seeing people doing these kind of things. I'm seeing just people just pitching in and getting on the team, and everybody seems to be in the same mode, which is, I don't know how long this is going to last. We know it's serious. We know we're saving lives every day that we do this, every hour, every minute that we do this. We're saving somebody's lives, so we'll continue to do it. Nobody knows when it's going to be over, but everybody knows it will be over. And everybody knows that when it is over, we're all going to go back to our jobs and stuff, but we will not be the same country. This goes to the first thing I mentioned about COVID-19. It was not clear to me in the beginning. It's not going to be clear to me till it's over. But the idea that this pandemic is a vaccine for the entire society, that it inoculates the society and gets us on real problems and not on fake problems. If President Trump continues to praise Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo and Gavin Newsom, and they continue to praise him back, we are in a different world now, a better world, a much better world. And it just goes to show you, America's not been in trouble for 20 years. It's been 19 years since we've been, 19 and a half, well, it's probably 18 and a half, since we've been in trouble, real trouble. And now we're in real trouble again, and that American character is coming out, and it's just freaking awesome. So Harbor Freight, God bless you. You guys are heroes. I don't for a second believe that there was an ulterior motive behind this. I genuinely don't, and even if there was, I don't care. I am anything that I can buy from Harbor Freight in the future, I am going to buy from Harbor Freight. So that's that. So let's see. And when I say good news, when I say the human counterattack begins, it's not the American counterattack begins. It's not the conservative or the Republican. No, it's the human counterattack. This virus has messed with the wrong effing species. They really, those little bastards, those little single strand, half alive bastards have messed with the wrong species. And we're starting to feel, for the first time, I'm starting to get a sense, and really for whatever use I am in this crisis, the only thing I can possibly say is that I have a pretty decent history of just kind of getting a general vibe for where things are going in a broad sort of way. And today was the first day I felt like we are not just holding the line. We're not just falling back. We're not just the center holds and the center is holding. But for the first time today, I felt that if it's not a counterattack, at least we're concentrating the forces for a counterattack. So let's see what else is going on out there. Hey, look at that. Teva, which is a giant pharmaceutical company in Israel, has donated potential coronavirus treatment to hospitals across the U.S. Basically, what they're saying here is Teva, the giant Israeli pharmaceutical company, has announced that it will donate more than 6 million doses of hydroxychloroquine sulfate tablets through wholesalers to hospitals across the United States starting March 31st. Over 10 million tablets are expected to be shipped within a month. I'm going to get back to the hydroxychloroquine in a minute. The tablets are approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. We've been talking about this for a while. It's a version of chloroquine, which is a 70-year-old drug. It's less toxic. It has less side effects. And then I just want to read, this is from the company spokesman, because it's the North American company on the account of this guy who's in charge of this Israeli pharmaceutical company. His name is Brendan O'Grady, and I'm just going to go way out on a limb and assume that's not an Israeli born name. But he says, we're committed to helping supply as many tablets as possible as demand for this treatment accelerates at no cost, said Brendan O'Grady. At no cost. That's different. That's different, and it's different all across the board at no cost. We're seeing it everywhere. No cost, no charge. We're going to pitch in and do it, and that just impressed the daylights out of me. And then also handy news. This is a gigantic pharmaceutical company. So I like this paragraph too. Immediately upon learning of the potential benefit of hydrochloroc, I'll get it in one breath sooner or later. Hydroxychloroquine. Teva began to assess supply and to urgently acquire additional ingredients to make more product while arranging for all of what we had to be distributed immediately, he said. So not only are we distributing what we have, but we're gathering our materials to make a whole bunch more of it. And this is cool too. Teva is also reviewing its other products to determine if some could also be of use against the coronavirus. If you had told me that an anti-malarial drug that is essentially working against a bacteria or even amoeba, it's bigger than a virus, you practically hit this thing with a fly swatter. If you had told me that an anti-malarial drug that's been here for 70 years is producing in 3 different countries now 100% recovery when administered along with other drugs, I would have had a hard time believing that a malarial drug that's been around for 70 years would have that kind of effect on virus multiplication. But you never know what you're getting. You never ever know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get benefits that you weren't even looking for, and that seems to be the case here. I don't know if somebody had a hunch or what, but it's real effective in treating malaria, and as it happens, it's real effective in treating something that has nothing to do with malaria. That's pretty damn amazing in my mind, and also part of a real good sign. So we got another story here of the forces preparing for the human counterattack against these miserable bastard viruses. Flu drug used in Japan shows promise in treating COVID-19. Let's get a little closer look at that. Drug used in Japan to treat influenza seems to be effective at treating the novel coronavirus that causes COVID-19, according to news reports. The antiviral drug called Favipiravir, or Avigan, showed positive outcomes in clinical trials involving 340 individuals in Wuhan and so on. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can pause it and go back if you want to. The gist of it is that I don't trust any of the information coming out of China, but this is not a Chinese drug. It's developed by Fujifilm Toyama Chemical. It's an antiviral drug, and it is apparently having a very, very good effect. Let's see if we can get some ideas on this. This is the data from China, so take that with a grain of favipiravir. But nevertheless, let's see, we're seeing here, same trial, lung conditions shown in x-rays improved about 91% of patients taking this drug compared to 62% who weren't. That's a significant number. And in the Wuhan trial, the drug also seemed to shorten the duration of a patient's fever from 4.5 days to 2.5 days, according to pharmaceutical technology. If you are in the midst of one of those fevers, and if it turns out also that you're having difficulty breathing, and you can reduce that time period from 4.5 days to 2.5 days, that's a big deal. Some of the people we've been talking for a while now that one of the reasons that the mortality figures are varying so widely is it depends on how the country decides to measure whether or not this was a COVID-19 disease. Italy seems to be saying that if COVID is present in any form, I think somebody once said detected it after the person had died, then it gets lumped into the COVID-19 bin. Germany, on the other hand, appears to be saying, no, we're only going to count cases that are clearly deaths as a result of this virus, and that mortality rate is a lot lower. But in any event, all these cocktails being used together are being rapidly shown to be effective. And when we started talking about, when I say we, I mean the society, I'm pretty late to this game. But when our society started talking about this and started talking about a vaccine, people in the know were saying 12 to 18 months. That's a long time. In fact, that's such a long time that it's essentially useless for the immediate emergency. But what we're finding now is that just coming out of nowhere, we're finding these existing medications that are not just kind of effective. In some cases, they appear to be 100% effective. It's practically a miracle. It may, in fact, be one. They're cheap. They're inexpensive. They've been in use. We know them well. They're not terribly toxic in terms of side effects, especially the later version of this, thanks to Lord Bios, the hydroxy version, as opposed to the chloroquine, whatever. So all of this is just spectacular news. Now, here's the problem. So we know that that from tests in where was it? I think it was France, Australia, and one other country I can't remember. All three of those are showing 100% recovery cases using hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine. I'll get it eventually. I'll know it like my last name. Now, the problem, of course, is how long will it take to get this certified in the United States? Typically, something like this as a treatment would probably take 2 or 3 years, something like that. Then they said, no, we might be able to get this down to 2 months approval. And then that was about the last I heard of it until Donald Trump's press conference today, when I learned that these drugs are going to be administered to patients on an experimental basis the day after tomorrow, 48 hours from now. These drugs are going into production. They're not going into testing, they're going into patients. 48 hours, less than 48 hours from now, people are going to start getting these drugs in New York, and we are going to have a real solid database of just how effective this is. I'm told that the hydroxychloroquine is even more effective when combined with certain antibiotics and so on. But the beautiful news here is that this is not a drug that we have to develop. It's not a drug we have to research. It's not a drug we have to worry about the side effects of. We know this drug very, very well. And it's cheap, and it's relatively easy to produce. And again, watching the president today, I was struck by a guy who has with the rest of the country. I'm not just saying just him. I think the whole country now. I'm just watching it in real time. I'm watching this president rise, just become a better man as a result of this. And I heard him say, look, they want to test it for 2 months or a month or something. He says, people are dying out there. We know that the side effects are small. Let's give it to patients, and that'll be the test. Why let people die needlessly? And I actually cheered, I said, yeah, I think that's great. And a few days ago, he activated the Defense Production Act. I think that's what it's called. And basically, what he's doing is he is incorporating all aspects of the economy. We're going to do a special show on that tomorrow in terms of what production, for instance, respirators. You'd think that in order to make respirators, you'd have to go to a respirator company, and those are limited. It's not like they're on every corner. But what we're finding is that American ingenuity, and from around the world as well, we're finding ways that things can be adopted. We're finding things like CPAP machines, which are common, are being adopted for use in some COVID-19 cases. So we'll deal with the mechanical good news tomorrow. I'm saving the best news for last here. And then we're going to call it a day because these need to be short enough for people to really get. So here's a headline I saw last night, and this one I just went through the roof over with sheer joy. It comes to us from what I consider to be the single most unimpeachable source in the world, and that's Johns Hopkins Medical School. So take a look at this. I saw this appeared last night. COVID-19 stopgap solution until vaccines and antivirals are ready. This is what doctors at Johns Hopkins are speculating. This news is about, I want to say 12 hours old or something. You know what? I'm going to go back. I don't want to spoil it. Here's what they're saying. You know what? I'll go back to the headline. Here's what they're saying, and I'll read you parts of the article in a minute. There's those little bastards, those magenta viruses erupting from the surface of a healthy cell there. Here's what they're saying. One of the other treatments that we have that is extremely safe is plasma. We've been giving plasma to wounded soldiers since at least World War II. Everybody's seen images in movies of World War II where they've got a guy down and they put a needle in him, and the medic or the corpsman is holding up that bottle of plasma. When people are bleeding out, yes, they're losing red blood cells, but what kills them before the lack of the oxygenating blood cells is just the loss of volume. There's just the loss of fluid volume in the system, and that's what does it. Blood plasma is essentially, if you take human blood, whole blood, and you centrifuge out all of the cells, you're left with a clear liquid that's called plasma. It's what the blood cells float in. And I don't know about this. I'll find out in about, well, the echo here is about 8 seconds or so. I believe, I'm almost virtually positive, that plasma does not generate an immune response because there are essentially no cells in it, and that's why you can just give plasma to everybody. You don't have to blood type them. It's just the fluid that your cells float in. But here's the news that this guy has said, and this is what Johns Hopkins has revealed. This is going to be very, very cool. What they're saying is that initial tests have shown that if you take the blood of people who have recovered from COVID-19, somebody's got the virus, they fight the virus off on their own, and then they recover and they're healthy again. They've won that fight because their bodies have manufactured antibodies. Antibodies are simply little markers that your immune system attaches to pathogens. Each one's unique to the particular pathogen, and the best way to think of it is it's like putting a rotating red light on a car on the freeway. It tells your immune system, that's the guy you want. Don't waste time dicking around checking IDs. That's what you're looking for. Go destroy that. That's what the antibodies do. Well, it turns out that if you have recovered from COVID-19 and you strain all of the cells out of that person's blood, you've got plasma. We deal with plasma all the time. It's one of the safest procedures ever. But when you take the plasma out of a person who survived and recovered from COVID-19, that person's antibodies come with the plasma, and those antibodies protect the person that the plasma is being transfused into. Did we all get that? If you find a person who's healthy, you strain the blood out, you take the blood plasma, that person who just beat the disease a day ago or whatever, his antibodies or her antibodies are still active in the plasma, and if you inject that into a person who's suffering, it could even be used before you get it, but if you've got somebody who's really going down with this virus, this is not a long-term solution. It's a different kind of immunity, but it's an immediate immunity. It's in an emergency situation, not long-term, clearly, because you want long-term permanent immunity if you can get it. But in an emergency situation, this is better than a vaccine, because if you get a vaccine, your body has to learn the pathogen and has to adjust to it, has to produce its own antibodies. It takes a while. It takes days probably for the vaccine to really start to be effective. Now, we're talking about, no, these are anti-COVID antibodies. They're going into your bloodstream right now, and a half an hour later, you have got a bloodstream full of these things that are determined to go out and find that virus, mark it, put a rotating red light around it, and then it will destroy it. And the body doesn't have to learn. It doesn't. When people go to the hospital and become very, very sick or die of a disease, when you see somebody who's very healthy, or let's take a completely healthy person for the sake of the argument, you find out that they die of pneumonia or COVID-19, whatever the case may be. The reason that person dies, if we're talking about a healthy person, is that their immune system has lost the race. That the pathogen, whether it's a bacteria or a virus or amoeba, anything, the pathogen got enough of a head start so that the immune system could not kill it in time, and the body simply didn't get there. The virus or the pathogen, the bacteria, basically outran your immune system. If you recover, it's because your immune system outruns the disease. And so I didn't know the term, but again, we've got a medical expert who's been with us the whole time, keeping me out of hot water. He said Lord Bio says that it's a plasma infusions like a flash immunity. That's a great way to think of it. Probably doesn't last very long. I don't know how long it does last, but it wouldn't be hours or days. I'm sure it would last at least for weeks. And the super good news is that according to Johns Hopkins estimate, Johns Hopkins doctors say that they expect that one healthy person will be able to produce enough antibodies to treat 2 sick people. And when you realize that 80% of the population is not going to the hospital at all, more than that, probably more like 85%, what you're finding is you're finding that well, I just lost my train of thought. I just read something there. I'll come back to that. Lord Bio says it'll circle out of your body fairly quickly without further injections, but the point is that may take days, and this therapy is for people who are right there. I remember the immune system's fight. What this basically is it's an immediate reinforcement. It's airborne. It's all of a sudden all of these troops, heavily armed, well-trained troops coming out of the sky on parachutes. Just when you looked behind you, you couldn't see anything. Here come these incredible reinforcements. They may not last very long, but they don't have to last very long, because as your body is fighting and racing against this pathogen, it's doing its job. It's making its own antibodies against the COVID-19 virus, but it's just not making them in time. Either the immune system is weak, or the viral load is so high. What this is it is a supercharged injection of antibodies that works instantly on that virus, starts knocking them down. And even if this kind of flash immunity only lasts for a couple days or less or even more, that's not the point. The point is that people who are in that critical stage where they're in a life and death fight, where their virus and their immune system are in this race to see who's going to win, what this means is this kind of therapy can get somebody through that to the point where they can then get ahead of the virus, and then their own immune system and their own antibodies will take over. I saw this news last night, and I just thought, my God, yeah, it's the ride of the Rohirrim. Exactly right, Pat Reed. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you know what that's like. It's dark, it's gloomy. We don't know if we're going to survive this battle. We got no friends, we got no allies, and all of a sudden, over the hill, here comes 10,000 expert horsemen, and in come the elf archers. You got reinforcements. You thought you were in a desperate situation, and you are. We are in a desperate situation. There's no question about it. I have been as clear as I can be about this, but I am not going to hide bad news. I don't want to spread false good news, but when Johns Hopkins University says this happens, I'll read the article to you in a minute. That's just damn good news. Just really, really, really good news. And as Lord Bios points out, every Red Cross blood donation center is equipped to collect plasma. So basically, what Johns Hopkins has said is it's going to take a while. What Johns Hopkins wants to do is they want to make sure that they're going to do a test that's going to determine that if we know this person's recovered from COVID-19, we know they've got the antibodies. But what Hopkins is saying is we only want the people with the strongest antibody reaction. We want the highest concentration of antibodies. We're going to screen for the people who have the most of these antibodies in their system and just take those people. Now, this is just a logical assumption on my part. It just seems to make sense in an emergency. But it seems to me that if you know that this therapy works, you start taking plasma from everybody who's testing positive. Take it from everybody. Inject it into the people that need it. If they're not showing enough of a response, maybe you got a person with weak antibodies or not a lot of them, get them a stronger dose, but you're immediately solving the problem. And like the hydroxychloroquine, better, like that drug, the beautiful thing about this, the beautiful thing about this is it's safe and it's commonplace. This is the thing. The bottleneck is what's the terrifying part. That's why you try to flatten the curve in the first place, is so that your medical demand doesn't exceed your medical capability. A drug that stopped this virus in its tracks, but which we didn't know. We didn't know how toxic it. We didn't know if it caused birth defects or nerve damage or anything. If we didn't know anything about it, that'd be one thing. But when you find that the drugs in combination with other well-established drugs have been sitting on the shelves for 70 years doing what they're supposed to do, and bammo, here it comes. And then you find things like this idea that you can flash immunize a person and have them immediately immediately have a body full of COVID-19 antibodies, go after that disease, knock it down, and let that person live long enough so that they can eventually catch up and win the race by developing their own antibodies. It's bloody marvelous is what it is. It's marvelous. I'm just really, really excited about it. And again, you can't beat the source, Johns Hopkins University, to me is unimpeachable. I want to read you a little bit about this article because there's a kind of a Q&A on there, and parts of this are interesting, so just give me 1 second. I'll drink of water here. I'll read this out loud for those of you who may be listening, only because this is just deserves to be read out loud. So it's a question and answer thing from Johns Hopkins University. Question: how can plasma be useful against the novel coronavirus? Answer: when you recover from many viral diseases, you have in your blood what are called neutralizing antibodies. These are antibodies that kill the virus. Once you recover, the plasma can be taken from donors. It's very safe. It's the same thing as using a blood donation, except they don't take the red blood cells, they take the liquid, they take the plasma. It is itself a drug. It can be used for the prevention of infection for people who are being exposed to it, or could be used for therapy for those who are sick. It's not a vaccine. Think about it as the administration of a protein. It's a liquid that is given to people that gives them immunity. Bad news is you got to keep getting it. Good news is it gives you immunity. That's damn good news. Really, really good news. Back to the article. Question, right, because the vaccine would provoke the recipient's antibodies. You'll have the antibodies, but they won't be your antibodies, though it'll do the same thing. Answer from Johns Hopkins, right. Question, and if someone is already sick, can the plasma help them? Answer, yes, it can be used for prevention or as a treatment. Question, this strategy is being used in China? Answer, yes. In fact, the Chinese sent 90 tons of plasma to Italy. I'm in too good a mood to take any cheap shots today. Question, will this need to go through extensive testing in the U.S.? Answer, we have to do this right. You need to have the protocol reviewed by officials in each institution's review board, and because this is an investigational drug, you need to have FDA approval to do a trial. And both documents are being sent in today, which was Wednesday, March 18th, to the FDA and the IRB, which is the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. That's how far along we are. The applications for the trials are in there. They're already filed. And then part of the answer, we have gone from discussions to the FDA and the IRB in 2 weeks. We've gone from discussions to filing the forms to get this thing going in 2 weeks. Question, how long would that normally have taken? Answer, many, many months. Question, how soon do you hope to roll this out? Answer, between 3 and 4 weeks. Now, I'm not certainly going to make any speculations on this, but I will simply say this. Of all the things that I've seen, especially in the last 24 hours since we did the last show, of all the things we've seen, the thing that is impressing me the most is how we are cutting this red tape. And again, my mood has changed. It's certainly changed for the duration of this crisis. Hopefully it's changed permanently. Nothing would make me happier than to get out of this ongoing endless combat with my own countrymen. But the fact of the matter is that things that used to take years or months are now taking days or hours. And things that need to be where they are getting there as fast as they can. If they don't have them, they're being donated. If they don't have enough of something that needs to be manufactured, people who manufacture other things are going to manufacture these things and get them on the spot. This is not just America at work, although I do happen to think that America is a powerhouse for this kind of thing, only because we're so used to being individuals and being responsible for our own selves. But when you hear people donating ventilators, donating this, donating that, not just donating time and money, those are always helpful, obviously, but donating things that can immediately impact this. As this exponential curve starts now, as the boom starts, now is the time that we need things like people saying, oh, we can make a respirator out of a couple of tin cans and a piece of string. And now is the time where we need drugs that are safe and proven to work, that we can administer to get people out of danger and keep them out of danger long enough for us to get a handle on better therapies if they're available. Flash immunity may only last for a couple days or whatever it lasts for. It's not as good as a vaccine, but it'll keep that person who's fighting this race alive. It'll keep them alive. It's just going to be, pow, here's your vaccine. It only lasts for however long it lasts. And when it runs out, we'll give you another shot. And there you go. And if what they say about this this antibody treatment is true, then you may say, well, flash immunization, it only lasts for a little while. The patient's going to need to continue to get injections. Okay, every day that this disease infects people, certainly 8 out of 10, if not 9 out of 10 of them, have severe flu symptoms all the way down to barely noticing it. Some cases don't even know they had it at all. If the test is available to develop the test for positive for COVID-19, which, by the way, used to involve apparently a Q-tip that is extended up into your, you know, the corpus callosum here that divides your two brain halves. Apparently, that is not a fun thing. They have to go way deep into your sinuses about that. But the president was talking today about a new test that Americans are working on, and that it's going to be 45 minutes to get a positive. If we get that test online and we can get a test for, yes, you're recovered, in other words, no COVID-19 viruses in your bloodstream, but antibodies protecting against COVID-19, then the medicine that we're going to need to keep our citizens and the world alive comes from us. We make it. We make the medicine. That's the factory. The factory that's going to produce these antibodies. If this Johns Hopkins thing is going to pan out, and Johns Hopkins to me is the absolute gold standard. If this therapy works out, you can say, my God, where are we going to get the quantities? Where are we going to get the quantities? How are we going to produce all of these vaccines? What kind of factories are we going to need? Turns out we're the factories. The factories that we're going to need are you, the people watching the show right now. You're going to be the factories. Those of you who are going to get sick with this disease, 9 out of 10 of you are going to make a full recovery without hospitalization. And when you're done, you will be a factory that produces immunity against COVID-19. You're the factory. And as this disease gets more and more and more widespread, the number of factories increases. That's what's so beautiful about this. That's what's so beautiful about this. The wider that disease goes, the more people recover. The more people recover, the more that this flash immunity becomes available to infected people treated by one healthy person. And when you think about the percentage that needs the treatment, maybe 10%, 15% of the total, the numbers are grand. And we don't have to build pharmaceutical plants. It's a temporary fix. But a temporary fix, if you've ever worked with duct tape, you know that a temporary fix can be permanent so long as you constantly address the temporary fix. And so here it is. Here it is. If this is true, if it works, and I believe it will because I trust this source, then it could be just a matter of weeks, maybe longer, months at the latest, where we will provide hundreds of thousands and then millions and then tens of millions, and eventually we will produce billions of factories producing antibodies that stop COVID-19 in its tracks and send it back to hell where it belongs. I told you that frickin' virus is messing with the wrong species. You know, these monkeys in the trees, that's one thing. The monkeys that came out of the trees, that's something else. You have messed with the wrong species, you miserable little single-strand bastards. So, tomorrow we'll be talking about some of the mechanical solutions and stuff, keeping you up to date on the good news. Again, one more time, just so we're clear, this is a national emergency. There's no question about it. Social isolation is saving lives, and you should concentrate on that every single hour you stay at home is an hour somebody, the hundreds of people, thousands, potentially tens of thousands, or even millions of people are going to live because of that. Those jobs will be there when we go back. If the government has to write a check for $1 trillion, it'll do it. If it has to write a check for $2 trillion, it'll do it. If the United States has to write a check for $5 trillion, it'll do that too, because we can. And I am no longer going to make any political commentary, at least certainly not about American politics. What I've seen out there has been what I've been looking for the longest time, and we all need to pull together on this. And that means no more finger pointing, no more blaming, no more crowing, nothing. We're all in this together. And the Democratic governors of New York and California and the President of the United States are patting each other on the back, and they deserve to. They deserve to. It's been a great 24 hours, and while we're certainly nothing like out of the woods, we're not even into the woods yet, to be perfectly honest with you. There's nothing like seeing the cavalry come over the hill. And both the drug treatments and this antibody treatment quick, inexpensive, easy to manufacture, plentiful. It's a godsend. And it really is. But what really the godsend is the human mind. That's the godsend. That's the godsend is the human mind, the human imagination, the human spirit, the ability to understand a killer that has been taking all animals off the planet, but taking us off the planet with just scythe cuts. Finally, these walking monkeys have figured out what these little bastards do, and this is the first time that we have ever in history, ever in human history, fought a global pandemic with weapons. We've never had weapons before, ever, and we've never had armor before either. This one is the one that we're going to learn from, and after this, it's going to be a whole new world in terms of our ability to stop these things. Everybody's taking this seriously. It finally did happen, and now it's time to go out there and redesign the O-rings on the solid rocket boosters, and it's time to take a look at how we glue the foam onto the external tank and all these other catastrophes that we never dealt with because they hadn't happened until they'd happened. Anyway, very good news today, true news today, highly reputable news today, and that certainly is a good day. So we'll be back tomorrow, Monday. Some talk about some mechanical aids and solutions. We'll have news all the time, obviously, and please share this with as many people as you can. Not for me, just for them. There are people out there who are scared out of their wits, and all we're trying to do with this show, every episode, is we're not trying to tell people don't be afraid of anything. We're just trying to tell people this is the size of the box that you should put your fear in. Put your fear in a box that's appropriately sized for this particular threat, and don't let that fear out and destroy all of your lives and all of your family's lives. It's serious. We're taking it seriously, but we're looking for good news that's real, and boy, we saw a lot of it today. All right, that'll do it for episode 3 of the CoronaSphere Lounge. It's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. A few people, a very few people, small number of people, very small number of people become members at BillWhittle.com, and they pay $9.95 a month to keep these programs coming. We work round the clock, and we don't stop. We do 11 shows a week, and now we're going to do a show a day until we get through this thing, and it's tough out there for everybody, but we could use your help. And frankly, if you've got $10 to spend and you can keep a local business in business, spend it with them. But if you got more than that, we sure could use your help. But we got to keep these businesses afloat. That means taking out food from the restaurants you like, patronizing as many people as possible. And until then, it's a good day. Good news is good news, and we saw a bunch of good news today. And best news of all is this real strong sense I'm getting that all this political crap is just going away. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for episode 4. This has been episode 3 of the CoronaSphere Lounge. And you guys be careful out there. Take this seriously. Don't let it own your lives, and we'll see you tomorrow.